How does it feel?
Well, it is definitely a historic day. I mean, joining you guys live from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, this is the culmination of 10 years of work. It's a huge thank you at this moment to our investors for being patient, supporting us. A huge thank you to the Grayscale team. Looking back on the last couple of years, making the decision to sue our regulator, to have that unanimous victory in court, and to then all of that come to fruition and actually have GBTC uplist on New York Stock Exchange as the world's second largest commodity ETF is just such a historic moment and such a milestone. So thrilled, feeling really good today.
Second largest commodity ETF and the largest crypto fund already in the world for Bitcoin. How do you go around then, Michael, attracting new assets to this ETF form? What do your conversations with clients look like today?
Well, I think what's really exciting about this day really is that you're now going to have 11 different spot Bitcoin ETFs on the market, and GBTC has really paved the way for a lot of those other products to come to market. GBTC will be differentiated though, right? It came to market with $28 billion of assets, tremendous liquidity. We're seeing that play out even further today on the New York Stock Exchange, but it won't necessarily be everything to all investors. And so some investors may look for these products that are super low cost, and that's what's most important to them. To other investors, the fact that GBTC has a 10-year track record, billions of dollars of AUM, that liquidity profile brought to you by a crypto specialist, that'll be some of the differentiators that attract them as well. But it's a little too early to see how it's all going to play out.
Michael, when we look at the Bitcoin price action today, we jumped up to 49,000 and we're back down barely above 46,000 now. Coming into today, a lot of investors were concerned about potential selling pressure out of GBTC. What are you experiencing in terms of flows?
Yeah, well, last time I checked, GBTC was one of the only ETFs that was positive on the day, right? And so we had a really successful and smooth uplisting to NYSE ARCA. Last I checked, the notional trading volume had already eclipsed well above $1.5 billion notionally today. So the volumes have been really strong.
Well, obviously that's for GBTC, which has taken up so much attention for this very reason about your attempts to convert it to the spot Bitcoin ETF, what it would mean for everyone else. But to go back to what we were just hearing from Commissioner Peirce, this approval was very narrow, very specific to these Bitcoin products. Grayscale has plenty of other products out there. You've got an Ether Trust, Litecoin, Solana as well, I believe. Are you going to pick a fight with the SEC about any of those, try to make any of those spot ETFs, Michael?
Well, I think you guys know our business model pretty well, and we're pretty transparent about it. We do have a family of 17 different digital asset products that are each at one stage of a very prescribed 4-phase life cycle. GBTC is the first of those products to get to stage 4 to uplist as a spot Bitcoin ETF. Last year, we already filed to uplist our Ethereum product, the Grayscale Ethereum Trust, to a spot Ethereum ETF. And we really believe that GBTC can really pave the way for the rest of that product family to continue along that 4-phase life cycle. And ultimately, you'll see from the Grayscale family an entire suite of digital asset or crypto-focused ETFs.
Wait, so if you want to see an Ethereum ETF, for example, how soon do you think something like that could happen? To Kaylee's point, the SEC was also very clear that this was just an approval for Bitcoin-related ETPs and did not, in fact, they were kind of critical about the crypto industry in their statement.
Well, I do think one of the things that we have to look at and how we got to this historic outcome was the fact that the SEC was treating the Bitcoin futures-based products differently than the Bitcoin spot-based products like GBTC. The fact that, we now have that, similar situation with Ethereum futures-based ETFs, but not Ethereum spot, may pretend that we may have similar arguments that surround the eventual uplisting or approval of spot Ethereum products in the market. We do have a market of significant size on the CME for Ethereum, and I think that's a really important point and another really important validation for how crypto as an asset class is here to stay.
Now, I'm curious about the fee structure, Michael. I ask you about this every time. It has been the biggest question in town when it comes to Grayscale and GBTC. Was the calculus that you'd rather keep the fee at 1.5% and even face potential outflows because of it, with others competing on fees, rather than try to compete in the race to zero for ETFs here?
Well, I think for us, first of all, like I've always told you, Sonali, it's always going to be that we were going to reduce fees, and we made good on that commitment. We reduced fees by 25%. Other issuers coming into the market with no assets, no trading volumes, no base of investors, we're really coming out of the gate offering incentives to get investors into their funds. I do think GBTC, like we've seen in other ETF categories, is really that specialist, that first to market with the AUM, with the trading volume, with the track record that does command a higher fee. And I think we're now seeing that now for spot Bitcoin products, the way we've seen it in other parts of the ETF ecosystem.
And I think this is a really important differentiation. You talked about flow volumes earlier. Flows can mean inflows or outflows. What are you seeing in terms of directions either way, net flows at this point in time?
I think it's too early to say. Since GBTC has been trading since 2015, we've had investors come into our fund and out of our fund every single day, hundreds of thousands of investors across all 50 states. I think the same will be true with GBTC now as an ETF.
And finally, Michael, obviously this concludes what had been a long litigation mess that Grayscale, if you will, had to be involved in with the SEC. But there is other litigation I want to ask you about, because obviously Alameda has involved Grayscale in a $4 billion suit, essentially seeking $4 billion in value for Grayscale shareholders. Now that these spot ETF products are approved, how does that change that legal issue for you?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's tough to comment on ongoing litigation, but what I will say is that we have fulfilled the promise that we made to investors, which was getting GBTC uplisted as a spot Bitcoin ETF, and that all came true this very morning.
Michael, what's next? What does the next couple of days look like to you? Are you running around looking for new assets here? Are you planning on cutting your fees once more?
Well, I'll tell you, the last few days have almost really been a blur. Having a lot of conversations with folks like yourselves, speaking a lot with our investors. We're hearing an outpouring of support from the investment community, really thanking the Grayscale team for forging ahead, for doing the tough work to go up against the regulator, knowing that we had sound arguments, and that really has paved the way for the outcome that we've now achieved here today.